Hey Patrick, hope I got your name right. Just watched a couple of your videos, so I could have got it wrong, but I think it's PatrickBurns. But anyway, I mean, I think it's fair what you have said. Um, it's a funny thing. I believe in a life-affirming philosophy. I sort of believe it's our responsibility. But I mean, I also am coming from a fairly dark view of the world by some standards. I believe the question of suicide is really important. I really think any philosopher of any sort needs to deal with the question of suicides, for example. But the idea is to say that there is a reason for living. Gary theoretically says there isn't, but then he's found reason to survive. He's still surviving. So I don't actually disrespect Gary for coming to his conclusion. I think it's not quite consistent with the fact that he has found reasons, and if you ask him, he can tell you the reasons. But he still wants to say that those are somehow unnatural reasons. So nature doesn't get credit for being worth living. That's where we end up disagreeing a lot. I think another thing about just the characterization of it being an unhappy family of philosophers, there could be some truth to that. Sorry, that probably made a lot of noise what I just did. There could be some truth to that, but to me, I've always been really struck by how people discussing philosophy could get at each other's throats when just the fact that they want to discuss these topics gives them more in common than they as a group have with the rest of the world that's mostly apathetic about them. So I have an appreciation for people that want to engage these kinds of conversations. So, if I've told somebody they're totally wrong or tried to characterize their philosophy in a way that they don't appreciate, I mean, I still appreciate that they're taking part in this conversation and the dialogue, which I find is productive. On the staircase thing, that's very interesting, because this is why I spend so much time at these low-level epistemological things, is to get these first steps of the staircase. And I actually think it's funny that Gary values those bottom steps, because I don't think he's done a very good job on them. I think really Gary's staircase is missing the bottom 3 to 5 to 10 steps. And Gary has climbed his way up on the staircase so that up where he's really got some coherent ideas, like about instant runoff voting, he's correct, but he's done it by skipping the foundation. But then he looks back and wants us to use these steps, which didn't really support his weight, that he had to scramble over and which broke under his weight. But he's up there on those other steps, and it's like, how could I possibly gotten there unless these first steps are appropriate? I think my epistemology supports what Gary's higher level ideas are better than Gary's own approach to it. It's not really true that we have to agree on the steps or the precursor of our path to find that we're all at some juncture that we can agree on. So it's sort of like any decent morality should tell us why murder is wrong, and there's some big differences between someone that says it's because God said so, or someone said it's because they're naturally compassionate, or because somebody says, well, I just don't want to get caught and pay the consequences. Or these are all very different reasons, and they can have ramifications that are different for different people, but that doesn't mean that all those people couldn't agree to vote for a law that makes murder wrong, for example. And similarly with understanding each other. People say, oh, well, we can't even communicate if we can't agree on the basic definitions, but you can communicate, and what you need to communicate about are those basic definitions. So I embrace semantics in a way that a lot of other people that are doing philosophy that have to face these semantical issues constantly still somehow reject semantics as pointless or just words or just rhetoric. They can say that's what it means to them, but really they spend a lot of time, as I do, sorting out the semantics so we can try to get enough compatibility. In the end, our semantics are never going to be exactly the same between any two people, let alone a group, and that does not mean you can't have communication. It's like the word tall. If I say, wow, he's tall, and he's 7 foot tall, one person might think anybody over 6 foot is tall. Another person might think that anybody over 5 foot is tall. it wouldn't really matter. We'd both agree when I say that person's tall, even though there's a little bit of a mismatch in our definition. So as long as there's an overlap in terms, and some communication can go through. And if it's a small gap that doesn't overlap, then the communication will be pretty good, maybe technical quality. If it's a huge part that doesn't overlap and it's just a little bit of overlap, then you're just going to have a low efficiency in your communication. But it still is possible. So those are my thoughts on your video, and I think it's interesting to analyze the group dynamic just as much as the subjects that we want to discuss. So I appreciated the video. Thanks for sending it to me. And by the way, that's the only way when people send videos through the YouTube, somebody sent you a video feature, I've never once watched a video sent to me that way. But if you PM me and say, here's a video I'd like you to look at, then I'll watch it. I've watched every one of those that somebody has sent me, so you send it to me the right way. And take care. Look forward to hearing from you again in the future.